Welcome, brave souls, to a night of terror and mystery. I'm your host, the Keeper of Dark Tales, and tonight I have a story that will chill you to your very core. Settle in, if you dare, as we delve into the haunting tale of the Cursed Key. Before we begin, let me share a little secret with you. As I speak these words, I can't help but glance over my shoulder. You see, in this very room, there's an old wooden door. It's always been locked, its key lost to time, but sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear scratching, as if something on the other side is desperate to get out. Perhaps let something in. Now let's turn our attention to tonight's tale. It all began in a quaint little town, much like any other. Our story centers on Sarah, a young woman who had just inherited her grandmother's Victorian house. Little did she know, she was about to inherit much more than just bricks and mortar. The house stood tall and imposing, its weathered facade hinting at secrets long buried. As Sarah stepped inside for the first time, the floorboards creaked beneath her feet, as if whispering ancient warnings. But Sarah, caught up in the excitement of her new home, paid no heed. It was on her third night in the house when she found it. While cleaning out an old dresser, her hand brushed against something cold and metallic. Pulling it out, she discovered an ornate brass key, its surface etched with strange symbols. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she held it, almost as if the key itself was alive, pulsing with an otherworldly energy. Curiosity got the better of her. Sarah began trying the key in every lock she could find. Door after door, nothing fit, until she reached the attic. There, hidden behind a dusty old painting, was a door she hadn't noticed before. With trembling hands, she inserted the key. The lock turned with an ominous click. As the door swung open, Sarah was hit by a blast of cold air. But it wasn't just cold, it felt wrong, unnatural. She peered into the darkness beyond, and that's when she saw them. Eyes, dozens of glowing eyes, staring back at her from the void. In that moment, Sarah realized her terrible mistake. This wasn't just a door, it was a gateway, and she had just unleashed something that had been trapped for generations. Spirits poured out, filling the house with their unearthly presence. Whispers echoed through the halls, shadows danced on the walls, and objects moved of their own accord. Sarah's dream home had become a nightmare realm, trapped between our world and theirs. Night after night, the haunting intensified. Sarah would wake to find cryptic messages scrawled on her mirrors, her possessions rearranged into bizarre patterns. The spirits seemed to be searching for something or someone. As the days turned to weeks, Sarah's sanity began to fray. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Constant presence of the otherworldly beings was taking its toll. Leaving wasn't an option. Somehow, she knew that these entities were bound to her now, through the power of that cursed key. It was during one particularly harrowing night that Sarah made a chilling discovery. While researching the history of the house, she stumbled upon an old photograph. There, standing in front of the very same house, was her grandmother, holding the brass key. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. This wasn't a random inheritance. Her grandmother had passed on this burden knowingly. But why? What dark secret was her family hiding? As Sarah dug deeper, she uncovered a twisted family legacy. Generations ago, her ancestors had made a pact with beings from another realm. In exchange for power and wealth, they agreed to act as guardians, keeping the gateway sealed and the spirits at bay. But now the spirits were free, and they were hungry. Hungry for the life force of the living, the energy of our world. And Sarah, the last in the bloodline, was the key to their plans. With each passing day, the barrier between worlds grew thinner. Strange occurrences began to spread beyond the house. Neighbors reported seeing shadowy figures in their yards. Pets went missing. Children spoke of imaginary friends with glowing eyes. Sarah knew she had to find a way to close the gateway before it was too late. How do you fight an enemy you can't see? How do you seal a door when the key that locked it is the very thing that set them free? As I sit here recounting this tale, I can't help but wonder, what if Sarah's story isn't unique? What if there are other gateways out there, other cursed keys just waiting to be found? Perhaps, dear listener, you should take a careful look around your own home tonight. Check your drawers, attics, your hidden corners, and if you happen to find an old, ornate key, Well, let's just say some doors are better left unopened. This is the Keeper of Dark Tales, reminding you that not all inheritances are blessing, and some family secrets are better left buried. Until next time, may your nights be filled with sweet dreams, if you can sleep at all. It was supposed to be a harmless adventure. 5 friends, barely out of high school, deciding to spend Halloween night in the abandoned Blackwood Manor. Local legends said that when the moon was obscured on All Hallows Eve, a ghost appeared, seeking vengeance for a long-forgotten wrong. We laughed it off as we entered the decaying mansion, our flashlights cutting through decades of dust and cobwebs. The air was thick with the musty scent of neglect and something else. Something older and far more sinister. As night fell, we gathered in the grand ballroom, telling ghost stories and daring each other to explore darkest corners of the house. That's when we noticed the clouds rolling in, slowly blotting out the full moon that had been shining through the cracked windows. At first, we thought it was the wind when we heard the whispers. Soft, barely audible, like dry leaves skittering across stone. But then the temperature plummeted, our breath suddenly visible in the frigid air. Who dares disturb my rest? The voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere, sending chills down our spine. Before our terrified eyes, a figure began to materialize in the center of the room. It was a man, dressed in clothes from another century, his form translucent and shimmering with an otherworldly light. But where his face should have been, there was only a swirling void, dark and bottomless. On this night, when the veil is thin and the moon hides her face, I returned. The specter intoned, its voice like gravel and ice. Who among you will help me right the wrong that binds me to this cursed place? We stood frozen, unable to run, unable to speak. The ghost drifted closer, tendrils of mist curling around our feet. No volunteers? It asked, a hint of malice in its hollow voice. Then I shall choose. A spectral hand reached out, pointing directly at me. I felt it pull, as if hooks had latched onto my very soul, drawing me towards the apparition. That's when Sarah, always the bravest of us, stepped forward. "Wait," she cried. "What wrong? What keeps you here?" The ghost paused, its eyeless gaze turning to her. A betrayal, Gist, a love destroyed by greed and lies, my name erased, my story forgotten. Only on this night, when the moon hides in shame, can I seek the truth that will set me free. As the specter spoke, fragmented visions flashed through our minds. A duel at dawn, forged letter, a love torn apart by jealousy and deceit. "We'll help you," I found myself saying, surprised by my own courage. "Tell us what to do." For the next hour, guided by the ghost's cryptic clues, we searched the manor. In a hidden compartment behind a faded portrait, we found a bundle of letters. Ink faded, but still legible. They revealed the truth. Our specter had been framed for theft by a rival, leading to his death in a duel and his lover's suicide. As we read the final letter aloud, the ghost's form began to change. The swirling void of its face coalesced into the features of a young man, his eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and relief. "At last," he whispered, voice now soft and human. "Truth is known. I can rest." The specter began to fade, but not before turning to us one last time. "Remember," he said, "the veil between worlds is thinnest on All Hallows Eve. Be careful what you summon, and be prepared for what might answer." With those words, he vanished, leaving behind only a lingering chill and the faint scent of autumn leaves. As if on cue, clouds parted, moonlight once again streaming through the windows. We stood in silence, trying to process what we'd just experienced. In the years since that night, we've returned to Blackwood Manor every Halloween. The ghost has never reappeared, but sometimes, when the moon is obscured and the wind whispers through the empty halls, I swear I can hear a faint thank you echoing in the darkness. This experience changed us all. It taught us that the line between this world and the next is thinner than we think, especially on nights when ancient magic still holds sway. To anyone planning a Halloween adventure in a supposedly haunted place, I offer this warning. Be careful what you wish for. The ghosts of the past are always waiting for a chance to tell their stories. And sometimes they might just choose you. Listen. So this All Hallows Eve, as you don your costumes and carve your pumpkins, take a moment to look up at the moon. And if you see clouds rolling in, obscuring its face, listen closely. You might just hear the whispers of those who walk between worlds, seeking justice, seeking peace, seeking someone brave enough to help them find their way home. Remember, not all Halloween spirits are tricks or treats. Some are lost souls, waiting centuries for the chance to set things right. And in helping them, you might just discover a courage you never knew you had. It was a crisp autumn evening when I first heard it. I was walking my dog past the old Willow House, a Victorian mansion that had stood empty for decades. The sound cut through the quiet night, a woman's heartbroken sobs echoing from the darkened windows. I froze, my blood running cold. The house was abandoned, had been for years. There couldn't be anyone inside. Yet the weeping continued, filled with such raw anguish that it made my chest ache. Against my better judgment, I found myself drawn to the house night after night. Always, the weeping would start as darkness fell. Fading with the first light of dawn, I became obsessed, desperate to understand the source of such sorrow. Local gossip provided little help. Older residents spoke in hushed tones of tragedy, of a young bride who had lived there a century ago. But details were scarce, lost to time and fading memories. Driven by a need I couldn't explain, I began digging into the house's history. Hours in the library's archives, poring over microfiche and dusty records, slowly revealed a tale of love and loss. In 1892, Elizabeth Willow, newly married and full of hope, had moved into the house with her husband Charles. But their happiness was short-lived. Charles, a sea captain, was lost in a storm barely a year into their marriage. Elizabeth, devastated and alone, had shut herself away in the house. Neighbors reported hearing her weep day and night, her grief echoing through the empty rooms. And then, one day, the crying stopped. Elizabeth was never seen again. The more I uncovered, the stronger the connection I felt to Elizabeth's story. Her pain seemed to reach across the decades, calling out for understanding, closure. One night, unable to resist any longer, I entered the abandoned house. The air inside was thick with dust and the weight of forgotten memories. As darkness fell, the weeping began again, louder and clearer than ever before. I followed the sound up creaking stairs, down long hallways, until I found myself in what must have been the master bedroom. There, in the fading light, I saw her. Elizabeth's ghost stood by the window, translucent and shimmering, her face streaked with ethereal tears. She turned to me, her eyes filled with a century of sorrow. "He promised he'd come back," she whispered, her voice echoing strangely in the empty room. "I've waited so long." In that moment, I understood. Elizabeth wasn't just mourning her lost love. She was waiting, trapped by her own hope and grief, unable to move on. With a shaking voice, I told her what I'd learned. How Charles's ship had gone down, all hands lost, how he would never return, no matter how long she waited. As I spoke, Elizabeth's form seemed to solidify. The weeping stopped, replaced by a look of dawning comprehension. "Thank you," she said softly, a sad smile touching her lips, for remembering, for understanding. Before my eyes, her ghostly form began to fade. But as she disappeared, I caught a glimpse of another figure beside her, a man in a captain's uniform, reaching out to take her hand. In the days that followed, the weeping was never heard again. The old Willow House stood silent, its tragic story finally laid to rest. This experience changed me profoundly. It taught me that sometimes the most haunting ghosts are those of our own making. The hopes we can't let go of, the grief we can't move past. To anyone who hears a cry in the night, who feels drawn to a place heavy with history, I say this: listen, understand. Sometimes all a restless spirit needs is for their story to be heard, their pain acknowledged. As for me, I'll never forget Elizabeth and her century of tears. Her story reminds me that love can echo through time, that grief can transcend death itself, and that sometimes the greatest peace we can offer is simply to remember. So the next time you pass an old, abandoned house and feel a chill run down your spine, pause for a moment. Listen closely. You might just hear the whispers of a story longing to be told, a soul seeking the understanding that will finally set it free. Remember, not all hauntings are meant to frighten. Some are cries for help, echoes of love and loss that have reverberated through the years. And sometimes all it takes to quiet those echoes is a willing ear and an open heart. It all started when we moved into Oakwood Manor, a sprawling Victorian mansion on the outskirts of town. The price was surprisingly low for such a grand home, but we were too excited to question our good fortune. My wife Sarah, our two children, Emma and Ethan, and I were thrilled to start our new life in this historic house. The first night, we all slept in the master bedroom, too tired from moving to set up the kids' rooms. As we drifted off, I heard it. Faint whisper, almost like an echo. "Don't close your eyes." I dismissed it as a trick of the wind. The whispers continued, growing stronger with each passing day. In the kitchen, we'd hear the clatter of dishes and a woman's voice saying, "Not the knife, please, not the knife." In the study, the scratch of a pen and a man muttering, "The debts are too much. There's only one way out." Each room seemed to hold its own tragic story, playing out over and over like a broken record. We tried to ignore it, to rationalize it away. But as the days turned into weeks, the echoes grew louder, more insistent. Emma started sleepwalking, heading to the attic each night where we'd find her staring at the rafters, murmuring about a hidden treasure. Ethan became obsessed with the pond in the backyard, constantly talking about a girl named Lily who needed his help. Sarah and I were not immune. I found myself spending hours in the study, poring over non-existent financial records, feeling a growing sense of despair. Sarah would stand in the kitchen, holding a knife, eyes vacant and unfocused. Terrified, I began researching the house's history. What I discovered chilled me to the bone. Over the past century, Oakwood Manor had seen a string of tragedies. A man who hanged himself in the attic after losing his fortune, a woman stabbed by her husband in the kitchen, a young girl who drowned in the pond, and so many more. Each tragedy seemed to be replaying itself, with us as the unwitting actors. We were being drawn into the same fates as those who had lived and died here before. One night, as I sat in the study, the whispers crescendoed into a cacophony of voices, all sharing their stories of loss, betrayal, and despair. In that moment, I understood. The house wasn't just echoing the past. It was feeding on it, trapping souls in an endless loop of their final moments. And now, it wanted us to join them. With a clarity born of desperation, I realized what we had to do. I gathered my family, forcing them out of their trances, and we fled the house with nothing but the clothes on our backs. As we drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Oakwood Manor seemed to loom larger than ever, its windows glowing with an eerie light. For a moment, I thought I saw faces pressed against the glass, dozens of them, watching us escape the fate they couldn't avoid. We never returned to Oakwood Manor, but its echoes still haunt us. Sometimes, in quiet moments, we catch ourselves slipping back into those tragic roles. Emma reaching for invisible rafters, Ethan staring longingly at any body of water, Sarah's hand twitching toward kitchen knives. This experience changed us profoundly. It taught us that the past is never truly gone, that the echoes of tragedy can reverberate through time, ensnaring the unwary. To anyone considering moving into a historic home, I offer this warning. Listen closely to the whispers of the past. Not all houses are content to be mere witnesses to history. Some seek to recreate it over and over with each new family that crosses their threshold. So the next time you walk through an old house and feel a chill run down your spine, pay attention. That whisper you hear might not be the wind. It might be the voice of someone long gone, trying to warn you of the fate that awaits. You stay. Remember, not all echoes fade with time. Some grow stronger, feeding on the fear and despair of those who came before. And if you're not careful, you might find yourself becoming just another voice in the chorus of tragedy, forever replaying your final moments in the House of Echo. As for my family and I, we've learned to recognize the signs, to fight against the pull of the past. But sometimes in the dead of night, I still hear those whispers calling us back to Oakwood Manor, promising that this time the story might have a different ending. But we know better now. Some echoes are best left unheard, some stories best left untold. And some houses should be left to their ghosts. started with an old film camera I picked up at a flea market. Vintage Leica, beautiful condition. I couldn't wait to try it out. The first roll of film I developed left me shaken. In every shot, translucent figures hovered in the background. Ghostly faces peered from windows. Spectral hands reached towards the lens. I told myself it was a trick of the light, fault in the film. But deep down, I knew. These were spirits caught on camera. With trembling hands, I loaded another roll and headed to the old Millbrook Cemetery. Click. An ethereal woman in Victorian dress, weeping by a weathered tombstone. Click. A soldier, uniform torn and bloodied, saluting a fallen comrade's grave. Each photo revealed a story, a tragedy frozen in time. Weeping woman, Sarah Thornton, dead in childbirth, forever mourning the baby she never held. The soldier, Private James Miller, killed in World War I, eternally honoring his best friend who died saving him. Word spread. People began to seek me out, begging me to photograph their homes, their workplaces, anywhere they suspected a haunting. Click. A young boy drowned in a backyard pool, still trying to reach the surface. Click. An old man in the attic of a farmhouse, endlessly searching for his lost wedding ring. With each photo, I felt the weight of their stories, their unfinished business. I couldn't just observe. I had to help. I started investigating, digging into local history, tracking down descendants. For the drowned boy, I helped his parents find closure. For the old man, I located his ring, lost behind a floorboard for decades. The more I helped, more spirits sought me out. They appeared in my viewfinder, pleading silently for aid. Click of my shutter became a siren call to the deceased. One night, developing yet another roll of ghostly images, I realized the toll it was taking. Dark circles under my eyes, weight loss, a pallor to my skin that mirrored the spirits in my photos. I was becoming a ghost myself, caught between worlds, neither fully here nor there. But how could I stop? These souls needed me. Their stories deserved to be told, their final wishes fulfilled. So I keep shooting, keep developing, keep unraveling the mysteries captured in my lens. Each click of the shutter is another spirit's chance at peace, another story pulled from the shadows of history. If you ever find an old camera in a dusty shop, think twice before you buy it. You never know what you might capture on film. Spirits are out there waiting for someone to see them, to hear their stories. And if you ever see a gaunt man with a vintage Leica, his eyes haunted but determined, don't be afraid. That's just me, Alex Winters, the ghostly photographer, forever caught between two worlds, one frame at a time. Remember, not all exposures reveal the living. Sometimes, the most powerful images are those that capture what lies beyond. So the next time you look at a photograph, look closely. You never know what or who might be lurking in the background, waiting for their story to be told. It began on a quiet night, much like any other. Our hero, let's call him Jack, had just moved into an old Victorian house, kind with high ceilings and wooden floors that groan under your feet. At first, Jack loved the house, its character, its history. But then, footsteps started. It was always at night, soft at first, barely there. Tap, 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 like someone walking on tiptoe, trying not to be heard. Jack would get up, check the house, nothing, no one there, just shadows and silence. But the footsteps kept coming back, night after night, getting louder, more urgent. Tap, tap, tap. Now a firm stride, confident, purposeful. Jack couldn't sleep. The sound was driving him mad. He had to know where they were coming from, where they were going. One night he decided to follow them. As darkness fell, he waited, and sure enough, they came. Tap, 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 from the attic, down the stairs, through the hallway. Jack's heart raced as he crept after the invisible walker. Floorboards creaked under his feet, but the phantom steps never faltered. They led him to the study, room he rarely used. Footsteps stopped at the fireplace. Confused, Jack examined the area. His hand brushed against something, a hidden latch. With a soft click, a secret compartment opened. Inside, a dusty old journal. As Jack read, the house seemed to hold its breath. The journal told a tale of two brothers, of jealousy, betrayal, and a fortune lost. One brother, consumed by greed, had murdered the other. Right here, in this very house. He hid the body and took everything. But the dead don't always rest easy, especially those with unfinished business. The footsteps Jack realized belonged to the murdered brother, still walking the halls seeking justice. As if on cue, the footsteps started again. But this time they weren't alone. Another set joined them, heavier, angry. Air grew cold. Jack could see his breath, misting in the dim light. Two figures appeared, misty, barely there. Jack could make out their faces, so similar, yet so different. One sad, the other furious. They didn't seem to notice Jack. Their eyes were locked on each other. Years of hatred, of pain, visible in their ghostly faces. Angry one lunged at his brother. But this time, the victim was ready. They struggled, their forms blurring together. A scream pierced the night, not of pain, but of release. In a flash of light, the angry spirit vanished. The murdered brother turned to Jack. A look of peace on his face. He nodded once, then faded away. The house fell silent, but it was a different kind of silence, lighter somehow, as if a great weight had been lifted. Jack never heard the footsteps again, but he kept the journal, a reminder that some secrets don't stay buried. Sometimes justice comes on quiet feet. So, dear listeners, the next time you hear unexplained footsteps in your home, pay attention. They might be leading you to a truth long hidden. But be warned, once you uncover the secrets of the past, you can never go back. You become part of the story, just like Jack, just like me. We just moved into an old Victorian house on Maple Street. It needed work, but we saw potential. My wife, Lisa, our teenage daughter, Emma, and I were excited to make it our own. If only we'd known what lurked beneath our feet. Started with a discovery during demolition. I was tearing up old floorboards in the kitchen when my crowbar hit something that wasn't wood, a trapdoor, hidden for decades under layers of linoleum and hardwood. Curiosity got the better of me. I pried it open, revealing a set of stairs descending into darkness. The air that wafted up was cold and stale, carrying a scent of decay and something else, something I couldn't quite place. I called Lisa and Emma to see. Together, flashlights in hand, we ventured down those creaking steps into a basement that, according to the house plans, shouldn't have existed. The room was large, stretching under the entire house. Bare bulbs hung from the ceilings, their light barely penetrating the gloom. But it wasn't the size of the room that made us gasp. It was what we saw on the walls. Shadows, dozens of them. But not ordinary shadows cast by object. These moved on their own, silent scenes playing out in endless loops. In one corner, the shadow of a man paced back and forth, wringing his hands. Near the stairs, a woman's silhouette cowered, arms raised as if to ward off a blow. And in the center of the room, two figures danced a macabre waltz, their movements jerky and unnatural. We stood transfixed, unable to look away from this grotesque shadow play. Each scene seemed to tell a story, final moment frozen in time. That's when we noticed the writing on the walls. Names and dates scrawled in what looked disturbingly like dried blood. John Winters, 1887. Mary Sullivan, 1902. The list went on. Grim chronicle of the house's hidden history. We should have left then, should have run and never looked back. But a morbid fascination kept us rooted to the spot. Emma was the first to make the connection. "Dad," she whispered, pointing to a shadow near the far wall. "That looks like old Mr. Jenkins from next door." She was right. The stooped figure, forever reaching for something just out of grasp, was unmistakably our elderly neighbor. But Mr. Jenkins was very much alive. We'd seen him just that morning. As realization dawned, the temperature in the room plummeted. The shadows began to move faster, their silent screams almost audible in the heavy air. We ran then, scrambling up the stairs and slamming the trapdoor shut. But it was too late. We'd seen what we were never meant to see, and the basement had seen us. In the days that followed, we noticed changes. Lisa would stand in the kitchen, staring blankly at the spot where we'd found the trapdoor. Emma started sleepwalking, always heading towards the basement. Me? I found myself drawn to the neighbors, obsessively learning their stories, their secret fears. We were becoming like those shadows in the basement, slowly losing ourselves to the house's dark history. It all came to a head one night when I found Lisa and Emma in the kitchen, prying at the trapdoor. Their eyes were vacant, their movements puppet-like. As I tried to stop them, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window. For a moment, just a moment, I saw myself as a shadow, endlessly repeating the motion of pulling my family back. That was when I understood. The basement wasn't just showing the past, it was shaping the future. Every shadow down there was a fate waiting to be fulfilled, a tragedy waiting to repeat itself. We left that night, abandoning everything. As we drove away, I glanced back at the house. In every window, I saw shadows moving, waving, beckoning us to return. We never went back to the house on Maple Street, but its influence lingers. Sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I see shadows moving unnaturally. Lisa still stops and stares blankly at times, and Emma's sleep is haunted by nightmares of endless dances and silent screams. This experience changed us profoundly. It taught us that the past is never truly buried. The shadows of history can reach out and pull the unwary into their endless dance of tragedy. To anyone who uncovers something hidden in their home, I offer this warning. Some doors are meant to stay closed. Some basements should remain unexplored. And some shadows are best left in the dark. So the next time you're in an old house and feel a chill run down your spine, pay attention. That movement you see out of the corner of your eye might not be your imagination. It might be a shadow of the past, waiting to make you a part of an endless, silent performance. Remember, not all renovations uncover simple structural issues or hidden treasures. Some reveal the darkest parts of history, moments that stain a place forever. And if you're not careful, you might find yourself becoming just another shadow, forever reliving your final moments in the basement of someone else's future. As for my family and I, we've learned to stay in the light, to avoid the dark corners where shadows play. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I still hear the creaking of those basement stairs, calling us back to join the silent shadow play in the basement of shadows. Meet Sarah, a seasoned paranormal investigator. She'd seen it all, or so she thought. Haunted houses, ghostly apparitions, things that go bump in the night. Nothing scared her anymore. Then came the Blackwood House, an old mansion with a dark history. People who went in changed, if they came out at all. Sarah wasn't afraid. This was her chance at the big time. Proof of the afterlife, caught on camera. As night fell, she set up her equipment. Cameras in every room. Audio recorders to catch every whisper. EMF meters to detect the slightest change in energy. The house was quiet at first. Almost too quiet. No creaks, no settling noises, just silence. Sarah started her investigation in the attic. Dust covered everything. Old furniture, boxes, a mirror cracked down the middle. Flashlight flickered. Just for a second, but enough to make her pause. Then she heard it. A whisper. So faint she almost missed it. Leave, Ed, while you still can. Sarah grinned. This was what she came for. She pressed on, deeper into the house. In the main bedroom, the temperature dropped. Her breath came out in clouds. The EMF meter spiked, needles dancing wildly. A shadow moved in the corner. Sarah spun around, camera ready, but it was gone. She checked the footage. Nothing there. But when she played back the audio, a voice came through clear as day. You don't belong here. Sarah's heart raced, not with fear, with excitement. This was it, real evidence. As midnight struck, things escalated. Doors slammed on their own. Objects moved across rooms. Sarah struggled to keep up, to document it all. In the study, books flew off shelves. Pages ripped themselves out, swirling around her like a paper storm. She ran to the hallway. The mirrors there showed reflections that weren't hers. Faces twisted in anger and pain. Sarah realized too late. This wasn't just a haunted house. It was alive, and it was angry. She tried to leave, but the doors wouldn't budge. Windows slammed shut. The house was keeping her in. Whispers turned to screams. 100 voices, all crying out at once. Sarah covered her ears, but the sound was inside her head. Her equipment went haywire. Cameras exploded in sparks. The EMF meter caught fire. In the chaos, Sarah saw them. The ghosts. Not just shadows now, but full apparitions. Men, women, children, all victims of the house, all trapped. And they wanted her to join them. Ghostly hands reached for her, icy fingers brushing her skin. Sarah ran, but there was nowhere to go. Every room was a dead end. As dawn approached, Sarah found herself back in the attic. The cracked mirror seemed to call to her. In its reflection, she saw the truth. The house didn't just trap spirit. It fed on them, and now it wanted her. With the last of her strength, Sarah smashed the mirror. The house shook. The ghosts wailed, and then, silence. Sarah woke up outside. Her equipment was gone. The house stood quiet as if nothing had happened. Sarah knew the truth. She'd escaped, but at a cost. In the light of day, she saw her reflection. Her hair had turned white. Her eyes held a haunted look. She'd gotten her proof, all right, but no one would ever believe her. And a part of her would always remain in that house with the other lost soul. So, dear listeners, the next time you think about ghost hunting, remember Sarah's tale. Sometimes the spirits we seek are better left alone, and some houses are hungry for more than just your attention. Picture this, a rundown house on the edge of town, peeling paint, broken windows, a roof that's seen better days. But there's more to this place than meets the eye. You see, this house wasn't always alone. Once it was part of something bigger, something magical, a carnival. Oh, but not just any carnival. This was a place of wonder and excitement. Bright lights, joyful music, the smell of popcorn in the air. But that was long ago. Now only silence remains. Or so it seems. I first heard about this place from the locals. They whispered about strange noises at night, eerie lights when no one was around. Curious, I decided to investigate. As I approached the house, the air grew colder. The wind whispered warnings, urging me to turn back. But I pressed on. The front door creaked open at my touch, as if inviting me in. Inside, the house was a mess. Dust covered everything, but something caught my eye. In the corner, a faded poster. On one, come all. It read, to the greatest show on earth. As night fell, things changed. The silence gave way to whispers. Then music. Faint at first, then louder. A carnival tune, cheerful yet wrong somehow. Shadows danced on the walls. Not random shapes, but figures. Acrobats, clowns, lion tamers, performing their acts for an audience long gone. Then I saw him, the ringmaster. Tall and posing with a top hat that seemed to scrape the ceiling. His eyes, they burned with an otherworldly fire. He didn't speak, not with words. But his message was clear. This carnival wasn't done. Its performers weren't at rest. You see, this wasn't just a house. It was a gateway, a portal to a world where the carnival never ended, where the show must go on, forever. But why? What kept these spirits here? The answer came in flashes. Visions of the past, greed, betrayal, a terrible fire, lives lost, dreams shattered. The carnival folk, once so full of life, now trapped, seeking justice. Or was it revenge? As the night wore on, their story unfolded. They were wronged, cheated by those who promised them fame and fortune. Their deaths were no accident. Now they wait, performing for eternity, hoping to lure in those responsible, to make them pay. The ringmaster's gaze fell on me. For a moment I feared I'd be trapped too, another unwilling performer in this ghostly show. But no, I was merely an audience, a witness to their eternal struggle. As dawn broke, the spirits faded. The house fell silent once more, but I knew the truth now. When night falls, the carnival comes alive again. So if you ever find yourself near an old, abandoned house, listen carefully. You might hear the faint sound of carnival music on the wind. And if you do, ask yourself, are you brave enough to buy a ticket to the greatest show in the afterlife? Remember, some performances never end, and some audiences never leave. It was a house like any other, or so it seemed. Old, yes, but nothing out of the ordinary. That is, until night fell. I remember the first time I stepped into that playroom. The air felt heavy, thick with secrets. Toys lined the shelves, their painted eyes following my every move. As darkness crept in, something changed. The room became alive. It started with a whisper. Soft at first, barely there, then louder, clearer. Child's laughter echoed off the walls. I froze. My heart raced. I was alone, wasn't I? The rocking horse in the corner began to sway. Back and forth, back and forth. No breeze, no one there, just moving. I wanted to run, to flee this madness, but my feet wouldn't budge. The dollhouse lights flickered on, tiny windows glowing in the gloom. Shadows danced behind the curtains. Were those little figures moving inside? A music box sprang to life, its haunting melody filling the air. The tune was familiar, yet wrong somehow. Off-key notes that sent shivers down my spine. Then I saw her. A little girl, no more than 6 or 7. She stood in the corner, partially hidden by shadows. Her dress was old-fashioned, torn and dirty. She didn't speak, just stared. Her eyes empty, hollow. I blinked and she was gone, but her presence lingered. As the night wore on, the room revealed its secrets. Whispers became words, snippets of a story long forgotten. A child's cry, a stern voice, the sound of something heavy falling. The truth dawned on me, each piece falling into place like a grim puzzle. This room wasn't just haunted. It was a prison, a place where a young life was cut short, trapped forever in an endless, twisted game. The toys weren't playthings. They were witnesses, silent guardians of a terrible secret. As dawn broke, the room fell silent once more. But I knew the truth now. Playroom may sleep during the day, but at night, remembers. It relives that fateful moment, over and over. Child's fear, a tragic accident, a story begging to be told. I left that house, but the playroom's story stayed with me. It haunts my dreams, a reminder that some places hold on to the past, refusing to let go. So if you ever find yourself in an old house and come across a child's playroom, be wary. Listen closely to the whispers in the night. You might just uncover a long-buried secret. But remember, once you know the truth, you can never unknow it. The playroom story will become a part of you, just as it became a part of me. We hope you enjoyed this chilling tale. If it sent shivers down your spine, give us a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. What was your favorite part? Don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling stories and hit that notification bell so you never miss a scare. Until next time, stay spooky and remember, sometimes the darkest shadows hide the most terrifying secret.